Veterans are the lifeblood of American freedom, serving in some of the harshest situations to secure that freedom across the globe. This is the Lounge with Legends show, celebrating their transformation from battlefield to business. The Lounge with Legends show with Marty the Moac Martinez and James A. Phelps, a.k.a. Spartan 6.
Hello and welcome. Another installment of Lounge with Legends. So, what's been going on, James?
Well, I was just impressed that you didn't mess up the intro. That's a great job, Marty. I got to give, it got to be positive, right? Have that positive mindset. Great job, man.
Thank you.
No, it's been going well. I just had a great, amazing week. I do ask for some prayers for my uncle, Roy Phelps. He's having some issues, Vietnam veteran, and he's dealing with some stuff there. So just if any prayers can go out for him, that'd be amazing. But other than that, just, any day that we're above ground and able to do what we do is a blessing.
Yeah, no, I agree, brother. We'll send prayers to Uncle Roy, and that he comes through this. Yeah, it's been a crazy week. It's been a very busy week. It's a short week because of Labor Day, and the kids are back in school, but they're kind of not really because you always half days, and so it's just chaos. And so I think one of the things is figuring out how do you build in resiliency into your life, and I think we got the right guy for that today.
I think we have the guy for that right now today.
Yeah, I mean, the guy doesn't bring any stress. He's like a calming goat. Some have even said, but but I want to show who we're talking about just to build this up. If you don't mind, let's talk about who this guy is.
Is there any event that you're worried about, or is there any event that John should be worried about?
I'm going to be honest with you, because again, I'm the underdog. I mean, that's kind of, I'm the under rooster, man. So obviously, like, he's a freaking former Navy SEAL. Like, I mean, you know the deal, Andrew. I'm like an Army dude, man. How much time do I spend in the pool, right? That is definitely an area that I need to work on. So, like, look, I'll give him the swim.
A 70-year-old grandmother gives you some tips on your swimming. You listen.
All the Iron men and women that I know always say you don't win this. You don't win in the water, right? So what I'm betting on is that he's going to go take off, chuck a shot, and he's going to burn himself out. And then where you win is in the bike, and that's where I'm going to win.
Getting it in today. getting in about 16 miles because John did 15, and I got to beat him today. I think the run we're maybe about even, and so he's probably got a little bit of advantage of me right now, but I know he's not a strong runner, so he's got me on the swim. I've got him on the bike, and then it's probably even in the run. So we'll see. Everybody thinks he's a Navy SEAL and he's got the advantage, and I love that. That's like, it's kind of like the Nick Saban. Like I'll let you feed yourselves that rat poison, man. We'll see who comes out in the end.
How can you not get pumped up with that?
Hey, I'm pumped up. I got nervous though for a second. Truth in Lending. John did a post the other day, and he had his feet in the picture. I don't know if he planned that, but he was in the pool and he has feet in there. And I was like, no wonder he could swim so well. I was like, oh my God, Andy's gonna have a rough one in the pool. So we were good. I feel pretty confident though.
Well, let's get him on here. We're talking about Andy Riise, the mental health coach. The guy's amazing, done a lot of stuff. Army football, U.S. Military Academy grad, just an amazing all around dude. And this is the follow up from John, who we had on 2 weeks ago.
Does that mean he's singing second?
I believe so. But let's get him on here. You ready?
Let's go.
Sorry about that. What is going on, brother? How are you?
Fellas, what's good?
Not much.
I was nervous though. You've been talking about stepping into the arena and stuff. Before we get going though, 3 officers in the same room. Let me get my safety device ready for Sergeant Major, just in case he decides to pop in. We're good to go. We're ready to do this.
Safety third. Safety third. Remember that.
Oh yeah.
There you go. We got 3 O's in the room. So there's definitely dry erase markers and laser pointers in the office somewhere.
For sure. None of us work for a living, ever.
Exactly. So, Andy, welcome. We've already given everyone a bit of a teaser, and they've already heard John's story. But we want to first. I want to find out, what got you started. Why West Point? Was that your life's dream, or was it? How'd that work out?
No, not at all. I grew up in Northern California, about as far away from West Point as you could think of it. When I thought of West Point, I thought of this little town in the mountains where we used to get our cut down Christmas trees every year. That's what I thought about. But so my sister was in the Army, and she did ROTC with her late husband, Christopher Walter, at the University of California, Santa Barbara. And then they were Desert Storm area, both went to war together and came back. And I remember, I just really looked up to him. I'm in junior high. She came back kind of this victorious hero and was talking about her exploits. And Chris, I have 4 sisters. So, besides my dad, the person I looked up to as our male figure was my brother-in-law, Chris. And he was an amazing just person overall, was a great Army officer. Unfortunately, in 1994, my sophomore year of high school, he was killed outside of his home in Fort Hood, Texas. They had just PCS there. He switched from being an airborne ranger like you guys, infantry guy, to being a Black Hawk pilot. He branch transferred. And so he's getting ready to take his first command. They're in 1st Cavalry Division, and they were going to Harold Farewell, got back late, and some guys casing the neighborhood. And just a crazy incident ensued that he ended up getting murdered and in front of my sister. And so really rocked my family. And I was going to a private school in the town next door where my sisters all went to school and had success because they went to 4 University. So I ended up having to transfer in the middle of my high school career to come back. And about that time, all these great friends of Christopher were coming back. And one of them was a former Army football player. Shout out to Brother Ratliff, Lieutenant Colonel retired Brother Ratliff, who's in Wake Forest, North Carolina with his family. And so just, started talking to me. And these guys I really looked up to. They were just like Chris, and they were all Army officers. And they started talking about West Point and about, and I started to get good at football then at Oakdale High School. And so lo and behold, they were a big reason. So the tragedy of my brother-in-law's death ended up leading to this mission to kind of finish what my brother-in-law started. And I remember my brother-in-law talking to me about going to West Point. He always wanted to go back and teach. And I feel like his life got cut short, and it just really inspired me to kind of carry the torch and keep that going. And he's got a brick actually at the Ranger Memorial there too, which was kind of cool because my last assignment in the Army, I park every day about 100 yards from that brick. And then, and it was cool. Some of our captains, we would do PT. I had the opportunity. We would end up back at that walk, and I would tell them Chris's story and why I joined the Army. And it just was something that I carried with me, so that was a big reason to do that. And it was also my opportunity to go play at the highest level in college. I had kind of a late start in my career. And obviously California is a great football state, not quite Texas. I will say that because I live in Texas now, but still a really good football state. And, I was a fullback, which was kind of a dying position at that time. There weren't a lot of Pac-10 schools that had that. And so this was really my only full ride offer. And so it was a no-brainer, follow in my sister, my brother-in-law's footsteps, go play college football. And then just the more I found out about it, it seemed like it was a great fit for me. So that's why I ended up going to West Point. I ended up going to a preparatory school for a year first, and then just really struggled academically. Got my, I did really well football wise. I was doing okay militarily wise, but it's prep school is designed just to be a 1 year for people who are enlisted and that want to come right into West Point. Maybe their SAT score is a little low, or recruited athletes who may be a little low on their SAT scores. So it's essentially an SAT prep year, like a redshirt year too. You play like at the JUCO level, and I was told I was not going to make it to go on to West Point. And so I started making plans to go walk on to Fresno State, and I was going to graduate. But then on the very last day, our graduation day, we'd already walked across the stage, and during our ball, our formal, they made an announcement, and they called a couple of us up, myself and a couple other people who needed medical waivers, and we found out we were going to West Point. I mean, so it was an amazing. Just changed my life forever, getting up. But then I realized, okay, now I'm just getting started to climb that mountain, and that 47-month crucible experience that's designed to kind of beat you down and test you in every way. But that's my why I joined the Army story.
Andy, that is possibly the most inspiring story that I've heard to go to West Point. I swear when James and I were lieutenants, so we were lieutenants at 325 over at 82nd Airborne, and every single lieutenant there was West Point, and so about your year group, and but none of them ever had a story like that. That's awesome. I really appreciate it. You said the Ranger brick. Is that at Fort Benning, or is there another place?
Yeah, it's at Fort Benning. He's got a brick in that memorial area that you guys know really well there too. So it just was a constant reminder about, and I think if you have a big enough why, you can do any what, right? And you always got to remember your purpose. And so that was just this kind of guiding light, this purpose behind my service. I didn't plan on spending 20 years. I was probably voted least likely to get promoted to captain, let alone the first lieutenant. So I think, the fact that I was out of my close friend group, the only guy to finish his career and retire as lieutenant colonel, I think is a surprise to some people. But being resilient has always kind of been my thing.
No, that's very true. I mean, establishing your why, that's awesome. And the brick story is funny because my brother commissioned in 03, and I was in OAF 1, and so he was OCS, and so him and my dad commissioned standing on each side of my brick at the Ranger Memorial, so that way I could be there. So it's pretty. I mean, there's a lot of great stories there. I look back, a lot of my friends that are no longer with us, but there's their brick. So there's something there. So, but
what do you think, as far as from the football perspective at West Point, who was the best, besides yourself, obviously, who was the best football player that you played with at the academy?
Yeah, I mean, and another guy who's no longer with us too. I mean, Lyle Weaver was absolutely he was one of my closest friends at West Point. I was offensive MVP. He was a defensive MVP. He ended up having a much better collegiate career than I was. But just in terms of just what a great leader he was, just his physical and his mental toughness, his ability to make plays, his nose for the ball, was hands down one of the best players I ever played with in my career. Unfortunately, he died of cancer last year, rest his soul. And so we our football teammates, we actually have a T-shirt that to memorialize him, Weaver with number 6 on it too. And so that he was hands down the best player. Right. But I just, the Army Football Brotherhood is really strong. And I'm just really honored to be a small part of that too, because it's definitely part of my identity and my tribe of people I associate with today.
Yeah, that's a small, tight group there. I mean, you think about it, I couldn't imagine just the pressure of, not only the academics, but then how much, practice, how much dedication and time you had to put into that to be able to perform at the D1 level. I mean, that's really inspirational there too. I mean, your whole story is truly inspiring for, and we haven't even got to the stuff that you're doing now. That's why.
Yeah.
Cow.
Andy, I'm gonna apologize in advance. We've got Navy showing up already, talking their trash. So I mean, sorry, I apologize. They're coming in.
Nice, gotcha. I'm waiting for McCaskill to show. When's he gonna pop in here and start try to blow this show up?
He said he was coming in the second half because that's when you're focusing on the Ironman and everything.
Okay, all right.
He's getting that G2, so we'll have to be careful then.
I know it's not an unblocked ambush anymore. It's like I'm anticipating it. So let's go.
Right. Yeah. So you went through West Point. I'm already feeling where you kind of founded your sense of resiliency. It's already coming through in the story. But when you graduated West Point, if you're not tracking those out there, West Point, the plebe year is just horrific as it looks like, it's pretty bad. But you graduate, and then what was your first assignment?
Good old Fort Sill, Oklahoma. So I commissioned as an artillery officer. And just one quick caveat, I mean, where I learned the mental game was at the West Point Center for Enhanced Performance. And that's where I started to get into mental skills. So, I'm getting beat down, I'm struggling. And so I started working one-on-one with an officer who had a sport and performance psychology background. 1989, that's where sport performance psychology came into the U.S. Army. And the Army is actually the largest employer of sport psychologists in the world now, to talk to you about the investment we made since then. And so I started learning about confidence despite setbacks, composure, in extreme circumstances, concentration, how it affects your decision-making, your motivation, goal orientation, all these intangible attributes of leadership that I was just trying to survive. I was, and so when I went to Fort Sill, I was in with it for the basic course. I ended up staying there. I'd met my wife, who was in Houston at the time. We were dating, doing the long distance thing. And then so we were just waiting. Obviously 9/11 happened right away. So everything, you guys were there. And so everything changed in terms of what the war that we were preparing for. We were not trained to prepare for that in any aspect of the human dimension. And so when I deployed 2003 as a multiple launch rocket system, we can get into that. You all can Google MLRS. I was a platoon leader, 30 men at the time. We didn't have women in that, but at the time it was just men. I'm in Iraq for the first time. I'm leading a convoy of 500 people across the desert. I've got 25 maps stacked up and the giant plugger on the dash, and I grease pencil up on the, and I'm like, man, I could never have imagined when I graduated just a couple of years ago that I would be here, but this is what you train for. And obviously then when we, once everyone got to Baghdad and then the insurgency started, it was kind of like, hey, we're now fighting an enemy that doesn't want to fight fair, is using our strengths against us, exploiting our weaknesses. We got roadside bombs, snipers, all those challenges. So we had to adapt really quick. And what I found was like, okay, I didn't fall back on, but I was rather supported and enhanced by my mental training. And so although we were physically fit to fight, we were socially connected and we were together, we had that cohesion. And although we were technically and tactically competent, relatively speaking, although I would say we needed to be better at kind of the basic infantry skills that you guys are near dear to you guys. Like the thing that kind of carried the day for me was for me as a leader was my mental toughness, and then our collective mental toughness. So that's when I came back, and it really, the lights came on a little bit, because I said, all right, there's got to be something to this. And so, but the problem was, like a lot of leaders today, I knew how to bring it in. I had a lot of personal experience with those mental skills, but I didn't know how to train it to my soldiers. Yeah. And so, but at that time, the Center for Enhanced Performance at West Point was now getting a demand signal to do these mobile training teams to come train their soldiers before they would go deploy on these mental skills that are really going to help carry the day. Let's face it, like the wars that we fought, you couldn't really simulate what you're going to experience in combat. And every single rotation, despite multiple combat rotations in Iraq and Afghanistan, was a little bit different.
Yeah.
I think that's when I realized combat is a thinking person's game. You got to train your brain as much as you train your body, your team, your character, and your craft. And then, and now that's part of my mission is to help leaders and teams do that and get better from the inside out.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, that about combat, just from Iraq alone, my experience from my deployments in 2003, then again, how it changed in 2005,
Yep.
and then again, how it changed when I was deployed from 2007 to 2009.
Yep.
Vastly different from what, like you said, we went in, airland battle. Then this new term, non-linear, non-contiguous. What the heck is that? Too many syllables. I'm infantry. I don't know what the hell that means. Bottom line means they're all around us. Great. We're surrounded. And I remember our BC at the time said, we're airborne. We're supposed to be surrounded. Suck it up. Roger that, sir. Keep moving. But yeah, it's very much a thinking man's game. And that builds a resilience in you. And a lot of our schools do this, Ranger School, a lot of our schools stress upon this, but you don't really get tested until it's game day.
You're right. It's a byproduct. And that's the traditional, one of the misconceptions of mental toughness is that, that it's a byproduct of something else, right? So it's like, okay, well, if I go through Ranger School, if I go do this Tough Mudder, or I go deploy, or I, go through this crucible experience in a sales cycle during a downturn in the economy, I start a business and now I move to the development phase and the startup phase. Now all of a sudden that it's a byproduct of being mentally tough. Well, I say that's the example of being like one of my teenage sons who, when we went to the beach this summer and he went skimboarding for the first time. And I was like, hey, he's like, well, I know what I'm doing because I watched a YouTube video. I'm like, yeah, good luck with that. Right. So it's like, okay, so are you going to learn how to skimboard or do something in terms of skill by watching it through a YouTube? No, that's a very indirect way of developing a competency at something. So that's the part. It's a mental skill. So just like a physical skill, you actually have to deliberately and intentionally do it with good quality reps and sets and feedback, ideally through coaching. And by doing that, you can develop the competence, to where it becomes part of who you are, not just what you do, because it's unconscious in terms of your competence, right? But it takes a while to do that. And the great thing about the mental game is that you're not beholden to a gym. You're not beholden to being at work. You can get those good quality reps and sets day in, day out, at home, even when you're sleeping, your brain is going. So it's something that's different than physical or even tactical skills.
Yeah. You mentioned, you have these skills and they work for you. How did you finally figure out this is the best way for me to pass along to my troops? Because in an academic environment, it's different as well. But we talk about, we consider PT, kind of treat that as a microcosm of your day. You can push yourself like you have behind you, get comfortable being uncomfortable, push yourself in the dog place, fight those demons. But outside of PT, what else did you do?
Well, the reality is I really couldn't really do much. I didn't know how. And I think that really came to light when I, like you said, my second combat deployment, 2008-9, I was a combat advisor to the Iraqi army. I mean, so look, my first deployment, I'm an MLRS platoon leader, and then I go and I'm a combat advisor, and I've never trained, advised, and assisted. I'm obviously not a Green Beret, which is what their charter mission was. But if you guys remember, they were asking conventional military units and to do this and getting trained. Hey, we're going to throw 12 people together from different MOSs, different fields and backgrounds and experiences. We're going to have you come together, train for 3 months, and we're going to send you to Iraq and Afghanistan. Good luck. And you're going to stand the indigenous force up so we can go home. Good luck with that. Right.
Right.
And so, man, what a complete, disaster is what it started with. But then I think that's when I started to realize, okay, now I'm learning how to coach. So it was kind of my first foray into combat coaching. And so by practicing mental skills and then training other people, I think that's when the high human skills came into. That's when I learned about emotional intelligence. That's when I learned about selective perceptions or having a mental filter, about how to, about self-talk and affirmations. I learned about, we're talking about goal orientation. And I was only applying it to myself, but now I'm applying it to the people that I'm training, and I even remember, doing some very, very basic, like imagery work where you're thinking about, you're using your brain to simulate something before you go do it, or to reflect back on something. So as you guys know, like a rehearsal of concept drill, this is a great example to what you're talking about, to where, okay, now we're not just using the sand table to be able to go through each of the phases of the operation. We're actually using all of our senses to and create this reality. So where it's actually, we're doing it together before we even go do it. We're actually changing the structure of your brain. And so it's a fantastic mental skill. And that's a great example, is that I think when I went back to teach at West Point, I realized that, hey, this isn't something that's designed to be a separate event. And it sure as hell isn't designed to be on a PowerPoint presentation, although education is really important. It's meant to be applied into something you're already doing it, And so for me, that's like, hey, if you're doing red team stuff as a team with your business organization, you want to be able to add challenge, change, and complexity to that, to make the event, the stress higher. And you not only want to focus on your behaviors, you want to focus on how individuals and people are thinking together to be able to approach problems and solve problems. And so I'm really not only on the education side, but I'm definitely more lean on the training side, because to me, it's all about application, right? And then the quicker you can make these mental skills more tangible and real, the better those quality repetitions get, and the lights start to turn on, because most people just don't have a construct for what this stuff is. But we do realize that training your brain is important now. And we know that more than ever in this post-pandemic area. And it's because it's VUCA, just like the combat environment we were in. It was volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous then. And life in business is VUCA right now. So it just shows the paramount, and so I'm really on this mission to kind of help democratize a set of skills. It's not just for elite populations, for elite athletes or elite tactical athletes. This is really for everybody. And the quicker we can get it in young people's hands, into student athletes, parents, coaches' hands, starting probably at the high school level, and move that up in different arenas, you're going to build up this capacity to be able to perceive and react to stress in a positive way, to where you're going to grow as a result of that, which is kind of the impetus behind, getting comfortable being uncomfortable and deliberate discomfort, the book we wrote. So,
yeah, you mentioned a bunch of concepts that are probably unfamiliar to our civilian counterparts, or any of the Navy people watching, because they're military concepts. Like what is red teaming, and what is VUCA?
Yeah, so VUCA is found in the Army War College. I believe it's like 2012 was when that concept came out too. And you see it; it's common in business now. Just kind of like the idea of the after action review is now commonplace in business. But it describes, all of the variables that are generally outside of our control in an operating environment, or an ecosystem, for example, right? And so V is volatile, ready to train. U is uncertainty, right? Understand, you don't know what's going to happen next. The C is complexity, which has to do with an infinite number of variables. McChrystal Group, General Stanley McChrystal, in the book Team of Teams, talks a lot about complexity versus complication. Right. And then the A is VUCA is the ambiguity, right? This is kind of operating in the gray zone, right? Things are not black and white. That could be moral and ethical. That could be, there's no right solution, imperfect information. So VUCA, that's what that describes that too. And then red teaming is this idea, when we go through the military decision-making process, right? Which this is all near and dear to our hearts, right? I'm taking you guys back to your CGSC days. So we kind of exercise this idea of mission command, right? Yeah. And so there's another one I'm gonna throw out there for you too. People just cringing right now. They're like, what the hell is he talking about? But yeah, now it's the red team is this idea kind of, who's playing the adversary, right? Yeah. So the blue team is somebody who's controlling, who's on the friendly side of things too. So for example, if you're going through a scenario like you're a sales team that's getting ready for a big push to launch a new product, right? You're going through all the scenarios in terms of what could happen, that's optimal in our favor, that, what's a course of action that could happen that's really dangerous to us, when what's most likely going to happen. And then what happens is as you go through that scenario, my cousin who just went through this with BP, the red team is then able to then change those VUCA variables to be able to crank up the level of intensity, to have challenge, change, and complexity happen in real time, which really tests your agility and your adaptability over time within a given scenario. So red teaming is becoming more commonplace. I think it's a really great practice that started with the military that's really starting to take roots in the business and healthcare.
Yeah, no, it's a concept that we used extensively as when I did a lot of theater Army level planning, because we said, and not to ding on Intel, but Intel's too important to be left to Intel. So who better to play the engineer bad guy than the engineers? And so bringing your team and having them walk on the other side of the table and plan and start to figure out how do you do that. And that's when we saw, because my area of responsibility was Africa, the Middle East, and Europe over the last decade, and so different. 1 week I'm planning here, the next week I'm planning over here, and if you know anything about Africa, at any given day something's on fire. So you can figure it out. So you have to have these tiger teams to quickly figure these things out. But these are great concepts that apply to business, like you're saying, more and more. And you're going to see these articles in Harvard Business Review, et cetera, because those are some of our best business practices from the military. So it's just like James and I wrote a book, wrote an article, top 5 things, business lessons learned from U.S. Army Ranger School. While I was in the swamps, this is what I learned, and it's about planning, recon, security, control, and common sense. Applying those patrol principles, you can apply to business, And so,
100%. And like all aspects of life. I mean, not everything is transferable from the military, obviously, but there's a lot that we did. And I know you guys are really passionate about transition. And that was, for me, like when I started to transition, I had this about 5 years out. I had this, I call it the tale of two Steves. I had one colonel who was a Steve who was completely, not prepared for transition, had no plan. He was not prepared. He's on the wrong coast. His family was kind of geographically isolated. And then I had another Steve who was really prepared. And the Steve who was doing it right, in my mind, taught me this, hey, how do you use troop leading procedures to be able to execute your transition and treating your transition like a mission, And that was like, okay, wow. And he's like, and his whole thing was like, hey, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Don't forget what you know and just go wander in the woods, running with scissors. That's a method, but it's not really effective. So use what you know to plan, prepare, execute, and assess transition, and but at the same time give yourself flexibility, right? And so using things like, hey, the 1/3, 2/3 rule, right? Like, hey, Warno, who should I, like my wife and my family, and so hey, I'm getting ready, we're gonna, you got to give them the 1/3, 2/3 rule, right? To be able to allow them to prepare and plan with you, just as like you're going with it. And, and then other aspects that I think are really important too, along the same lines, is like asking the question, who am I? And I think oftentimes you think about in that transition space that they're saying, okay, well, where am I going to go and what am I going to do? When you really should be asking yourself, who am I? And that character piece is something that it's central to my practice. Whether you're going through a transition or I call life's inflection point, or you're about to go, you're going to take on a high and hard challenge, right? Like a triathlon. All those aspects of mental toughness that I teach, the central piece of that is that identity piece. Yeah,
no, you're absolutely right. I think that's where a lot of us here, we focus on we say transition is easy. It's the transformation that it's going to catch you. The transition, we get how many classes when you're going through SFL TAP, which is a great program, but it's really the mind game. And like you said, it's not, I'm now getting out of the military. It's a change of mission. Don't jettison everything you've learned. And that's one of the things we teach in our courses is, turn your military superpowers into business success. It's the same thing: mission analysis, mission planning, mission execution, and mission assessment. Same thing we do for our military planning. You can do that for your change of mission. Now that you're evolving to the next level.
Absolutely. I met Andy before when I was going through my transition and transformation, because to be transparent with you all, I'm still working on that transformation. It's when I left, it was the first advice that I received was, you're not in the military anymore. And then I said, okay. So I stopped reading. I stopped doing everything that was so important to my survival. And then it jettisoned that. I was like, okay, bye. I'm not going to do that any longer. I'm no longer that. I basically went away from who I was. and I didn't know who I was. My identity was lost. I stopped hanging stuff up in my office. Like at one point I didn't have anything hung up. I had no DD-214. Now I'm like, I got to own who I was. Right. And if they don't like me, then so be it. Who cares?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're so important is that you are not necessarily what you do. Right. And that's a part of you. It's not all of you. So how do you bring that best parts of who you were to what you want to be next? Like for me, that was becoming a coach. And I think and like I said, I love teaching, and that was kind of my path I was always pursuing. I went back and taught. I loved teaching and was, doing that in a really important time in the Army. And so just help start the resiliency training program. And then I realized, okay, how am I going to figure this out? I'm an artillery officer and I want to learn these mental skills, and but I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. And I got all 10 years left to kind of figure this out. And so I started dabbling a little bit. And that's when I started doing consulting, and you see and first I'm not my bio and I don't have it all figured out, but I was just iterating and experimenting with a whole bunch of different things really early on. And for those of you out there who are still active duty, or maybe you're reservists and you're thinking about, or you're in a career where, maybe you're quiet quitting and you're thinking about doing something else. I think the idea is that, hey, just, don't be afraid to experiment and iterate and learn and make mistakes. I certainly did that as a consultant. And I was lucky to work with Jason Van Camp at Mission 60 to do some stuff and work with some really cool clients, like in the NFL. But I realized that, hey, how can I take this idea of who I am now as a teacher and turn into something that I want to become, which I later found out was a coach. And how do I blend in my passion for leadership and for the mental game and bring all those worlds together, kind of that ikigai concept, the Japanese term, how do you find your life's purpose? And so when I figured out, okay, I'm a coach, that made the path clear in terms of, all right, now I'm going to really narrow, I'm going to focus my fires. There you go, man. Boom. And I walk my clients through that now too, because I think the psychology transition is so important. But it's got to start with who am I and what am I all about, right? Yeah. And then so your identity is a combination of your values, your beliefs, your purpose, right? And if you can kind of really nail those things down, then everything else becomes clear. But oftentimes we rush to like, okay, where am I going to go? Where am I going to move to? What am I going to do? And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that it, because look, I had this idea of who I was, but I still pivoted 2 more times when I transitioned. And that's another thing too. It's like, okay, don't be afraid to make pivots and make changes. Is that stressful? No. Absolutely. For me, it was, but transitioning during the pandemic, it was a really weird time. It was really stressful. And it was, I like you, I lost my way. Well, I let my physical health go, my mental health. I wasn't addressing some things. And so that was kind of, now that I've kind of finally started to get in a position where I'm moving in the direction where I want to go. Now I need to be able to take things to another level as far as the transition journey that continues. It's like, that's why I challenged John to this half Ironman challenge. I was like, hey man, I need a high and hard goal. I need something physically demanding challenge. I need a battle buddy. I want to do it for a good cause. And so Warrior Riise provided this opportunity for us to do that. And I felt better now. I feel better now than I have in 5 years. And certainly since I've transitioned, but it's an ongoing process, right? And you're not going to have it ever figured out. And I don't know anybody who fully feels transition. What do you guys think?
No, I'm not the typical person, because I went straight from active duty to now military spouse, because my wife is active duty during COVID. So I was also thrust into that. I was a DoD contractor, and I'm homeschooling. So
wow,
it's tough. My wife is doing war college, and this is where we joke, is like, I never really get to transition, because next thing I know, we're talking about, geopolitical things. We're talking about dime principle, things that never allows me to unplug. The thing I have stopped is freaking knife handing, calling everybody the F word. I realize you can't walk in and go, hey, what's up, fuckers? You can't do that. So it's frowned upon. So, but yeah, there's
to me, don't let him kid you, Andy. He still does that to me all the time.
He's still got the knife hand. He's got sheath. He's got
He's not He's not fully unplugged. The facial hair is there. He's still plugged in.
That's right.
I mean, I'm trying to wear BDUs here.
Still got his green notebook. Do you write in your green notebook though? Do you still got that?
I switched from green to black.
Okay.
it's a work
What's
in
wrong with
progress.
these? Is there anything wrong with this?
No, again, best practice, right? Write it down. I got a whole, you can't see it on here, but I've got a whole shelf of all my green notebooks since we had as lieutenant, right? So it's
but one of the things that I love is the get comfortable being uncomfortable. And during that transition, we talked about this with John, is do your internal SWOT analysis as you're getting out. And one of the things that I was talking to my friend Eric Rickard, and during the internship, the Career Skill Bridge program, I was going to go into something that was comfortable for me. And he's like, why? You've done your SWOT analysis. You know what you suck at. Find an internship to build that up. That way you can now move that from a weakness to a strength.
Yep.
And those are those things as you're looking and talking about, who am I? The other thing is, what do I suck at, and work at that. And like, especially with PT, if you suck at burpees, do burpees. If you suck at swimming and right now you've got a weak kick, then kick, And so it's get comfortable being uncomfortable. I mean, that was our mantra the entire time, I was just so excited, here, I used to lead all the officers in PT. We got our Beaver Fit gym, and then COVID hit. I was like, damn it. So, but you got a book that you have here, Deliberate Discomfort. What's that about? And I've got it coming in the mail. It's not here. I apologize. Normally I read all the books ahead of time, but I have it, and I'm going to have you sign it. So what's this about?
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, there's a consulting company called Mission 60. At the time, we were called Mission Essential. My good friend, who's also the executive director for Warrior Rising, this is them. They're sponsoring our triathlon John and I are doing. He has a profit business called Mission 60, and they provide leadership and performance training for corporate and athletic teams. And like I said, our first client was the New York Jets a long time ago too. And if you guys got to have Jason on, I know he's gonna be a guest, but he's an unstoppable force. He's one of those guys where it's like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we sent a rocket to the moon, and he's going to figure out a way to like get an audience with Elon Musk. He's just one of those guys. So it should be no surprise that our first client as a startup was an NFL team. And so my involvement with that was just going to help bring in, so we started kind of focusing on this holistic fitness idea. So as I mentioned and alluded to earlier, and it's really the best practices from special operations, which you guys are veterans of. And, how do we bring those best practices, like we talked about, to athletics, to the corporate world, to these other arenas that could use it and need it. And so we started to kind of put together our content, and it was around really 6 pillars. And one was, the mental fitness side of things. The other was emotional, physical, bringing your team together. And then the other was professional and spiritual. And spirituality meaning, that, hey, what happens to you when you die, and like, what's your connection to the greater world beyond yourself too? It wasn't necessarily a religious piece as well too, but getting back into that character and the identity piece was the aspect of spirituality. So we decided to write a book around those 6 pillars. And so it's basically a fictitious story that features Jason and 12 real life, I call them action heroes, people who are veterans. And the idea is that Jason is this brand new team leader going to his special forces unit, he did serve in 10 special forces, and meets his commander, and he has to go around and meet all of his new teammates before they go deploy. And so as he's meeting their teammates, he hears their stories. And then what's cool about this is I think it turns into a how-to manual, is that we talk about when they feature these amazing veterans. We got Medal of Honor winners on there. People like Leroy Petrie and Flo Groberg, these just amazing human beings that have these stories. You're like, man, I can't relate to that. But then we flip the script, and then we have a master's PhD level expert in that area, that domain, like the mental domain, who then breaks it down. Okay, here's how you can develop this mental skill that Flo exhibited in this situation in combat, how you can apply that at home as a mom or a dad. And so we do that, and that's really the flow of how things go. So my job, I help write the science. We have the soft and then the science. And so we're the freaks and the geeks is what I used to call it. And so I was one of the geeks. And so my job was to then, make all the geeks speak, be on the same page. So to weave a thread through that as an editor. So chapter 1, chapter 11 on the science section are mine. And then I helped, was one of the editors along with, Andy Simons and Jason, who were the main co-authors. So it was an amazing project. I mean, it's hard enough to write a book with just by yourself or with one other person, but to write it with, all those people and all those different voices and experiences and cobble it together and have it be coherent was amazing. And I'm really humbled that it became a 2-time Amazon bestseller. And so it reflects a lot of who I am as well too. So I'm really proud of the project and I'm still proud to be associated with it.
I can tell you I saw his pop on there, but my Ranger buddy, Arnold Allen, I asked him, I said, hey, I'm looking for an amazing book to read. And he's very picky. He was my boss for a little bit of time too. And I always we looked at him as the tower. He said, this is the best book that I have read. And you have to get this copy and you have to get it. And I told him you were going to come on here today. He was all like, giddy. He's like, I'm going to be there and all this stuff. So, I mean, just thanks for writing the book and contributing to it, because it's affecting lives. And that's really what it's about. The lives that you're changing. That's what I believe in it, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, and what what I like about it, it's not your traditional, and I'm not knocking anybody when I say this too. It's not this like war story, like, well, look what a badass I am, and you could be a badass too. Motivational crap,
Right.
Like that's out there, frankly. And there's a lot of that.
James is writing.
What's that?
That's the book that James is writing right now.
That's the book that James is writing. Yeah, exactly. It's like, hey, look at me. It was all about, it's all about their trials and tribulations, and from the battlefield to the boardroom to the ball field. And it was like, hey, getting vulnerable. Like, this is what I screwed up. And, here's what I learned from that. And here's how to apply that to your life. So again, it was all about practical application for us so we could add value to the listener. And it has taken off. And now they do these 60-day deliberate to discover challenges where, we created some master classes. It's really picked up some momentum. So it's kind of taken on this whole other life. But I call it the art and science of how to do hard things and get better.
Yeah.
Yes.
We got to talk about this. We got to talk about what's going on with this race, Ironman. And so it's Army versus Navy, and it's half Ironman challenge. And we talked about a little bit, but to remind everybody, what's this going to support when they support you or support John?
Right. So this supports Warrior Rising, and Warrior Rising is a premium veteran service organization. They're a nonprofit whose mission is to support veterans in the most altruistic way possible by helping them help themselves. And they do that by, infusing them with a little bit of capital, which you guys know is a little bit of money. You don't need a lot of money, but you need some money to get things started. But they also provide them with mentorship, support, advisory services. They get them suits, laptops. And so it's really grown into an awesome nonprofit that I'm proud to be an ambassador for and be associated with. Again, started by Jason. And so they're so amazing. We're supporting 16 what we call veteranpreneurs. And so those are veteran entrepreneurs. Right. And we're going to be featuring them next weekend down in San Antonio, where you probably heard of a baby shower that's designed to celebrate the birth of a new child. And this is called a business shower. It's designed to celebrate the birth of a new business. So we're going to be doing some fundraising, going to feature these 16 veteranpreneurs. They're going to feature John and I, but we want to raise $133,000. That's our goal. They're 133 comes from the 133rd Army Navy game coming up this December. And so obviously I'm representing Army and John's representing Navy. For those of you who don't know, you probably heard from John. We're both 2001 graduates of our respective universities. And John and I just we've been in the same space and we became friends. We transitioned at the same time. We retired from the Army and Navy respectively. And so we had this friendly trash talking thing on social media to begin with. So we figured, hey, let's take our friendship and our rivalry and do it for a good cause.
It's absolutely amazing. And you're 46 days out from Waco. You ready?
Yep. Getting there. I'm getting there. So, I feel really good about my progress. I lost about 15 pounds, thanks to our amazing sponsors, Excella, who does a gut health. And I have a nutritionist. I have support. I have a coach. Like you said, Army guys, right? Other than combat, water survival training or maybe getting ready for Ranger school, like, you don't spend a lot of time in the water. And so that was probably my weakest area. I just posted about that recently. And so, like you said, I just broke that thing down, and I was really uncomfortable in the water. When I first started off, I did not like training to swim. I mean, I enjoyed swimming recreationally, but then just really started to break it down. And with the help of some feedback and some experts in that area and doing drills and just chipping away. It's like, it's like the stonecutter's credo, man. You can pound the stone 10,000 times and nothing happens until that one blow that you make is going to break the stone and
break it all. Yeah,
that's right. And so that's a quote by Jacob Riise. He doesn't have an E. Same spelling as mine, no relation. But that idea just is what I've been doing. I've just been pounding the stone, man.
That's awesome.
That's a great book by Josh Metcalf, by the way, for your listeners, is Pound the Stone. Read that to my kids. I've just been pounding the stone in terms of my training, my recovery. One of the things that, as you guys know, as veterans, like, when we were active duty, I treated my body like a freaking rental car, man. Like, we ride ourselves like we don't own it. Like, we're just like we're borrowing it or something,
Right.
And we just, it's like, hey, you work your ass off, and it's grit and grind. It's suck it up and drive on. It's like sleep when you die. And then all of a sudden, you retire. You're like, I got this litany of musculoskeletal injuries. Yeah. I've got TBI and PTSD. I've got, I'm inventorying this head to toe issues that I'm having. And it's kind of like, man, what the, I'm like, it's like the Comanche Warhorse effect. You ride them until they die, and then you eat them. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to treat my body like a rental car anymore. I'm going to treat it like a classic car. Right. And so, like, I own it, and it's got some bumps and some dents, but I can rehabilitate this thing, my mind and my body, and I could optimize it in a way that still allows me to go do hard things. And so in doing that, it, is not only great for you, but it's a way of inspiring and serving others. And that's what this is ultimately all about.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's really awesome. And so I'm putting how you can find them. You can go on here, go to the website that's scrolling right now, and you can support Andy or John. Looks like John's leading a little bit, but it's not too late. Second half team here. You can come over, pick which one, and then if you give over, what is it, $150, you get one of these cool shirts.
Yeah. And I'm not wearing mine because I just wore mine yesterday. It's in the wash. But you get that Team Andy shirt if you donate $100. You can get, you donate to Andy, you get that shirt. If you want to donate to Navy, I question your life choices, but you can still do that. And you get that Frogman shirt too. You can use it to be able to, it's like a dish rag or something.
Yeah.
And then, but be sure to donate to Army. And then also, there was a gladiator challenge. So disregard on that too. We had that.
I'll tell you, I've got a Team Andy shirt, and they're so freaking soft, and they're just awesome. I love it. Mine's dirty right now. I did PT the other day.
There you go.
Inspired me, but they're great shirts. You got to go out here, support them. Check out the website. It's for a great cause, and we got to have Army win. So
we got to go. Yeah, I'm about 10 miles. So I'm probably I was about 100. I started off about 100 miles behind John. If you follow us on Strava, if you're on there, I've got to update those numbers on the website. So those aren't completely accurate as far as my training numbers, but we're competing for not only the actual triathlon on October 16th in Waco, who gets the lowest time, but we're competing for training miles and who raises the most money on top of that. So it's kind of a trifecta competition there too. So I was 100 miles behind John, and I caught up with him and I passed him. Wow. And so now we're neck and neck, and we're probably about, I think he's, if I checked today, and I haven't done my workout today, I think he's about 10 miles or less ahead of me right now too. So we're neck and neck, and but he's a formidable, opponent. He's obviously, a fierce competitor, and we're just pushing each other. So it's fun because we're talking trash on social media and on platforms like this, but then, the secret is we're supporting each other behind the scenes. Yeah. We text each other all the time, so.
I've raced against a bunch of my friends that were Navy SEALs in triathlon, and I always found that they kick my ass in the water.
Yep.
I'm trying to hold my own with them on the run because they can run forever.
Right.
But it's on the bike where you can destroy them. So, and
the bike is my jam. That is my strength. And I got to tell you, I've been cycling casually for a while, and so, but I never would have known that I was good at the bike. And I guess it makes sense. My dad used to be a cyclist for a very long time. He did biathlon and stuff like that too. But turns out I'm pretty good on the bike, Yeah. So, but John's got elevation. I've got kind of the home field advantage. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to come down.
Heat. You're bringing in the heat.
Yeah. So I know he's going to beat me on the swim. It's like, hey, I'm the hippo, crawling on the bottom of the river, trying not to drown, my wetsuit on, and then so he'll be ahead of me there. I'll probably get ahead of him on the bike, and then the race is really going to be won in the run, I think. So it's like who's going to be able to outlast the other one. So
yeah. Now, I mentioned it to John when he was on. Next year, if you guys are doing a team thing, put me down on Team Army. I'll race with you, especially Waco being one of my hometowns.
Oh, for sure.
Leave me off that, please. Leave me off that.
Leave you off. Leave that. Well, you guys are getting ready for the Army 10 miler. So
you got the Army 10 miler coming up.
You got it coming
up.
David
Bardeman, who's chiming in here. You guys, we should have done the Strava thing with David because him and I keep each other motivated, and James provides the colorful commentary. But hey, we've gotten to that time. It's about the top of the hour, so it's time to ask you about freedom means. And so, as we ask each and every single one of our guests, you've served, you've sacrificed, you've done so much for our great nation. We ask you, what does freedom mean to you?
I'm gonna take a different approach to this than maybe your typical vet. I think freedom means learning how to free your own mind from yourself. I think we all have our own inner liberator and dictator inside of us. And I know if you're a veteran or you've gone through hell in the last 2 years, it's been really hard. And maybe that dictator that's on, that id and that ego, that dictator has a loudest voice and captures your attention. And, that negative dictator is undefeated in some ways, but they serve a purpose, right? Is to keep you safe. So you don't ever want to kill that inner dictator, but you want to feed your inner liberator, right? Because that's the real you. That's who you are as a veteran. Don't do it alone. Develop the mental skills that you can to be self-reliant, to be confident despite setbacks, to be composed in extreme circumstances, to stay committed and face challenges head on, but you can't do it alone, right? But it's not about you, but it starts with you. And so if you can start to work on yourself, with mental skills, you can get help that you need, and you feed that inner liberator. That to me is what it's all about. I would encourage as many people who are listening to this to be able to help each other free ourselves from ourselves and liberate our own minds. I call that unconventional warfare of the mind, and that's what freedom means to me.
Oh, brother, I love that. And it's very unique that you and John both took a different approach to the answer of freedom means. John took more the Thomas Jefferson approach, as I called it, what liberty really means. And so, but this great answer, I absolutely love it. And definitely unique. And but thanks for coming on. The comments are rolling in, like Jose says, at the end of the day, it's all about one team, one fight. We're a bunch of trash talkers, but that's what we have. And then I think he smells the challenge. I think Jose is saying he's going to actually do the next half Ironman in Waco is what he's saying with that for Team Navy. So,
okay. We'll be on the lookout. Be on the lookout. Yep.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. We're going to put you in the green room. Stay in there. We're going to catch up with you after the show real quick. So, and if my mouse comes back. All right. Thanks.
Well, now that it's safe and we're stepping out of the arena here, let me take my PT belt off because now it's our major debate safe here. But man, what an amazing episode. Just, I encourage everyone we didn't get to talk about the NFL. We didn't get to talk about Major League Baseball.
We have to have another. We're going to have another one. What we're going to do is I want to be able to have John and Andy post Ironman, give us reflections and talk about everything they're doing. I'd like to do that after the race. So we'll have to catch up with them and see if they're down for that.
Yeah, talk about Andy's W and how he's going to win. We talk about
how Army won. Yeah. And how we're starting a new tradition. Absolutely. So looking forward to next week. Next week, we've got another triathlete coming on, professional triathlete, Liz Diss. She's coming on.
To bring the academy some more love. So
Air Force Academy. So now we have all the academies covered. We just had 4 straight weeks of Navy, Marines, Army, and Air Force. So this is our joint ops for the year. Consider us very purple. But again, looking forward to it, and be safe this Labor Day weekend. Go enjoy your weekend and have a great time. Be blessed. Any parting words?
No, just sing second. Let's win. Let's get the W, Andy. We're going to crush this, man.
Airborne. All right. Have a good one, y'all.
You've been watching the Lounge with Legends show, countering the narrative that veterans are all broken misfit toys. Veterans are the lifeblood of American freedom. Serving in harsh situations, coupled with their training, have forged them into some of the most resilient and capable leaders in the world. And that's where we come in, celebrating the success stories, taking you on a journey of transformation from military to business. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll be back soon. But find us on Facebook at Lounge with Legend or at JTF214. Till next time.